So, before we start our class, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Min al Bahrain, alhamdulillah, marhaban min al Bahrain. Um, so, this is a very important issue. I want to address it. Why I didn't wear pink this week. Wa alaikum salam. I love wearing pink. The, the thing is, I need to have more wa alaikum salam clothes in my wardrobe that are pink. I don't have a lot yet. I'm working on building up the pink part of my team meeting. Right, exactly. So what ended up happening, sad to say, it's a very simple reason, but our dryer ended up breaking. So we have a washer and we need to have the dryer fixed. So we've been having to take our clothes somewhere else to wash them. So it's taking longer for my pink clothes to uh cycle through the availability of clothes that I have. So that's why I didn't wear pink. It's a really simple reason. But inshallah, as Asma said, salam, we're gonna have a team meeting and we're gonna discuss this issue of how we can incorporate more pink into the inshallah next week into the lives again. Sorry, I've been actually thinking about. I just haven't followed through with it yet. I've been thinking about getting a pink hat, so that way, no matter what clothes I have available, I always have something pink in my wardrobe. So that's a thought I'm working on. I just haven't followed through. I probably just need to look it up on Amazon or something and just order it. So, yeah. So now that we've cleared up that very important question about where is my pink for this week, I could also get a pink mushaf too. That would be another cool thing too, I think. So now that we've cleared that up though, ooh, a pink denim cap. Well, that does sound kind of nice. I'm liking that. I'm feeling that. Why pink? There's a lot of reasons. I like pink, but it's also symbolic for me personally. So, the thing, a lot of things that I do for me have to have like a personal meaning for me. Why I do it. Alhamdulillah, Allah bless you too. So for me, pink, there's a lot of symbolism to that. It represents, yeah, it's a soft color. It's simultaneously soft and it's bright at the same time, right? Yeah, I was thinking actually you can. I heard, I haven't found this myself. I heard you can get like how this one is blue. See how it's like a bluish color. I heard someone told me, I just haven't looked it up, that you can get a pink, like the colors in the mushaf will be pink, and I'm actually thinking about doing that. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah. Wa alaikum salam. Pink contacts. Ooh, that's a good idea. Oh, they sell them on Etsy. Okay, I have to check that out. Yeah, that's a good idea. But for me, like pink is symbolic of kind of breaking that barrier of what we consider to be masculine and feminine, right? Because a lot of people have these ideas of what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, what it means to be feminine. And so for me, pink kind of symbolizes for me that I don't adhere to those standards because I actually heard actually I seen a video of somebody that was like pink for men, a grown man wearing pink. I don't understand it. So I'm like, yep, yeah, real men wear pink. So I'm like, I'm wearing pink. So today's subject is pink, breaking stereotypes. I tend to be, if you haven't picked that up by now, I tend to be somewhat of a contrarian. So, alhamdulillah. So, I'm always questioning, like when people say, oh, you're not supposed to do this, or men are supposed to do that, or women are supposed to do that. For me, I'm always questioning why, who said, who made that rule up? Because to be honest, yeah, most rules are made up, to be honest. Right. So for me, I like to do things like that to kind of break those things and to make it okay for other people to see that like here's a grown person, right? Here's a grown man, if you want to call it that. I don't even like that terminology, but if you want to call it that, because I think it's just about being an adult, not being a grown man or a grown woman. It's just about being a mature adult. Walaikum salam. But here's a grown man, and he wears pink, and I think like for other people, yeah, that are hesitant to embrace other parts of their personality, I like to try to be an example for that to show that it's okay to embrace those other parts of your personality because I wouldn't say I'm like a manly man like that, but I do things, manly men things if you want to classify as that. I work out, I do stuff like that. But at the same time, I have other aspects to my personality. I have the softer side. I'm sensitive. I cry pretty easily. I do the dishes. I clean the house. So I like to show people that you don't have to put yourself in a box. You don't have to be this or that. You can be flexible, and you could just be yourself. To be honest, like the Quran doesn't tell us to be a man or to be a woman. How people will say that stuff like that. They'll say, "Oh, you need to be a man." The Quran doesn't say anything about you have to be a man. It's just, we were born in certain ways. It doesn't tell us to try to be that, right? It's telling us to try to be good people, right? To try to be a good person, to try to be a believer, to try to be righteous, not to try to be a man or a woman. You are what you are, and then within that, try to be good, try to use whatever you have been given, like we talked about yesterday. Try to use whatever particular talents you've been given to do good in the world. And I think that's what it's all about. So today, now that we've went through our discussion about pink, I want to go back to we have been talking a lot. We had probably 4, 5, 6 classes about Shaytaan and Iblis. So that's still an ongoing study for me, even though we took kind of a break from that yesterday and we went through Surah Al-Mudaththir, chapter 74, the first 7 verses. So we just kind of took a break for like an inspirational kind of talk. But I want to go back today to looking at some of the things about Shaytaan and Iblis, because I think there's a lot of important things that we still haven't covered yet. So the part of this that I want to present today, I think is really interesting. It's really interesting to me, at least, and I hope that you'll find it interesting. So I mentioned yesterday, for those that were here yesterday, that one of the things that I've been trying to do in these classes about Shaytaan and Iblis, I mean, I do that in other classes too, but specifically I mentioned this yesterday. I've been trying to research the history of these concepts amongst human beings that have lived all throughout history, groups of human beings, religions, and to try to see how these ideas developed to the point that we're at now, where we have these concepts of what is the devil, quote unquote, right? How did that develop? And you find a lot of interesting things. So I've also been researching the etymology of different words that we use to describe that, and what do these words actually mean, and where did they come from? Okay, so the more that I study the history of it and how it evolved to the present, how we think about it presently, the more I feel confident to say that what Shaytaan is referring to, or what Iblis, or all of these words are referring to, is an aspect of our own selves, the negative or the shadow part of our own selves. And this was a way that human beings throughout history personified the concept. Personification means you give an abstract concept human characteristics in order to bring it to light and to demonstrate it and to make it clear, right? So people have done this all throughout history, but abstract concepts like love is an abstract concept. Hate, kindness, all these are abstract concepts. So in a similar way, evil, negativity, bad things, all these are like abstract concepts. So Allah knows best. My conclusion from what I've studied so far, I think that throughout history, this evil part of ourselves, or this part of ourselves that has the potential to do bad in the world, I think we personified that into this idea of this external force, this devilish force, right? So yes, subhanAllah. So what's interesting is this connects to what I want to talk about today. So if you study even the word Satan, right? Where did the word Satan come from, or what is the meaning of the word Satan? So if you go back and you look at that throughout the Bible, right? You don't really find, especially in the beginning of the Bible, you don't really find a lot of support for the idea that we have now today of what Satan or the devil is. This is something that evolved over time. The word Satan from Hebrew actually means an adversary. The word Satan means an adversary or an opponent or something of that nature, right? So it's someone that's an adversary, or it's some characteristic that is an adversary or an opponent. And this is an ongoing study. Um, I'll try to like give more etymology and stuff like that uh, of these different words and where they came from. And potentially, once I finish studying all of them, hopefully we can have one class, like a whole class, where we go through systematically all these words. Okay. But for right now, I'm just giving like pieces as I study. So the word Satan in Hebrew has to do with being an adversary. And where we get the word devil from is the Greek translation. So diabolos, or however you say it in Greek, becomes devil. Okay, it's the translation of Satan. And it's interesting, diabolos, or like I said, I don't know if I'm saying it exactly right, but if you notice how close that is even to the word iblis, diabolos, iblis, right? So there seems to potentially be some overlap in these concepts that we can benefit from in our study. So I think it's really interesting that the word Satan, from a Hebrew standpoint, has to do with being an adversary or an opponent. Because one of the biggest things about Shaytaan in the Quran, and that's what I want to share with you today, is the idea that Shaytaan is an enemy. And you can even hear, like you hear in some Christian discourse, they even refer to it like that. They'll say the enemy, right? Or the adversary, right? So I think that's a really interesting point to consider, that based on the Hebrew definition of Satan being an adversary, and based upon the numerous amount of ayat that refer to Shaytaan as an enemy, I would say this opens up another way for us to understand what Shaytaan is, especially as it relates to that part of our own selves. So let's read some of these verses and we'll talk about them as we go. So we'll start with 2:168. 2:168. So 2:168, he says, يا أيها الناس كلوا مما في الأرض حلالا طيبا ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. Okay. O people, eat or consume of what is in the earth, halalan tayyiban, permissible and pure. So he gives two descriptions, halalan tayyiban. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ, and do not follow the footsteps of ash-shaytan. إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌ مُبِينٌ. He is a clear enemy to you. So you see how the idea of being an enemy is put in the same verse with ash-shaytan. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So that supports the idea even that we get from the Hebrew definition of Satan, that it's referring to this adversarial component, something that opposes you. Now, what's really interesting about this in this verse, let's think about this verse a little bit more. This verse starts off telling us, eat or consume what's in the earth. Wa alaikum salam. Sorry, I stopped to read the comment. It's telling you to eat what's in the earth, halalan tayyiban. Wa alaikum salam. Right? So it gives two descriptions. Halal, something that's allowable for you to eat, and tayyiban. Why does it put two things together? Right? Why not just halal? Follow me? Why halalan tayyiban? Why is it allowable and tayyib, which they translate sometimes as pure? But what does the word tayyib actually mean? Alhamdulillah, God bless you too. But why does it mean, or what is the meaning of the word tayyib, right? Not, I don't know if I would quite exactly agree with that. What is halal is tayyib? Perhaps, potentially. But I think that because he gives us two descriptions, we want to take, alhamdulillah, we appreciate you coming. It's interesting that you mentioned about being Catholic, because the original meaning of the word Catholic is universal. So I like the fact that you're saying you're Catholic. So to me, that has kind of a double meaning, like Catholic in the sense of this denomination, but also you said you're open-minded, so you're also universal in being able to take in information from different places. So alhamdulillah, welcome. We're glad to have you. Beneficial, could it be beneficial? I think I think that it's something along those lines. Because first of all, if Allah gives us two descriptions for something, right? Halalan, tayyiban, right? We don't want to just assume that they both basically mean the same thing. It's tayyib because it's halal. That's why I don't fully agree with that, thinking about it like that, because there's two different things going on here. So one is halal, it's been made allowable for you, and then the other is tayyiban. Yeah, tayyib could be translated as good, right? But a good and a pure source, that could be part of it. But if we look in the Quran, I think actually the Quran gives us a really good definition of what tayyib means. So let's go to another verse to see that. Yeah, something that you have to eat something out of survival, right? The energy in it is good and beneficial because it's halal. That could be part of it. There could be multiple different reasons. Let me say that. Kind of more good than regular good. Often forgot by some Muslims saying, yeah, for sure, for sure. Human beings and human doings. Yeah, maybe in another class. I don't know. That might be a little out of the subject. Maybe food that's good, contrary to rotten. Maybe, yeah. So I like all the answers that you guys are giving because I think it shows that there could be multiple different layers to what it means, right? Permissible, yeah. Halal would be permissible. What about tayyib? Good natured. So let's go to. I like these answers. These are good answers. And I like the fact that you guys are thinking about it. But see how, oh, as a name, yeah. But see how like the Quran makes you think if you stop and you think about every word. Look at we've gotten like what 10 different answers from that one question. Why does it say halal and tayyiban? Oh yeah, Google up. But you get what I'm saying? Even the fact that even if you Googled it to get that, you still had to think about it and research it. You follow what I'm saying? So just bima'na mubarak, potentially. Let's go to an ayat in the Quran, chapter 7, verse 58. And let's see if the Quran defines for us the meaning of tayyib. Pure, good life, good end, justly treated. That's okay. That's okay. We're glad you made it. So let's go to 758. So this verse starts off by saying, وَالْبَلَدُ الطَّيِّبُ وَالْبَلَدُ الطَّيِّبُ the land, the balad, walaikum salam, the land, the balad that is tayyib. What is a land? A land that is tayyib. The rest of the verse is gonna explain it. وَالْبَلَدُ الطَّيِّبُ يَخْرُجُ نَبَاتُهُ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِ. That the land that is tayyib, it brings out its growth by the permission of its Lord. It brings out its vegetation, its nabat. Then he says, to the opposite of that, وَالَّذِي خَبُثَ, and that which is the opposite of tayyib, which is khabutha, like filthy or impure, la yakhruju illa nakida. What does nakida mean? It doesn't bring out anything except nakida. What is nakida? Nakida in Arabic means, one Arabic definition of it is khuruju shay ila sahibihi bishidda. It means for something to come out for the one who is seeking it with great difficulty. That's what nakidan means. Nakidan khuruju shay ila sahibihi bishidda. It means for something to come out to the one who wants it, with great difficulty. Okay? So look at how he contrasts the word tayyib in this verse. وَالْبَلَدُ الطَّيِّبُ يَخْرُجُ نَبَاتُهُ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِ وَالَّذِي خَبُثَ لَا يَخْرُجُ إِلَّا نَكِدًا. That the land that is tayyib, yeah, I'm going to give an example, inshallah, as we go through it. The land that is tayyib, yeah, it's the same about the tree. Yeah, we're going to go to that next. The land that is tayyib brings out its growth, its nabat, by the permission of its Lord. And the one that is filthy or impure, la yakhruju illa nakidan. It doesn't bring anything out except with great difficulty. So the opposite of tayyib isn't necessarily saying he doesn't bring anything out. It doesn't bring anything out at all, but what it brings out is with great difficulty. So tayyib here in this verse is a land that produces its growth by the permission of its Lord. Follow you with me so far? Go to chapter 14. If we go to chapter 14, this is the verse that was just mentioned in the comment about the tree. So we go to chapter 14 and we go to verse 24. So chapter 14, verse 24. He says, Alam tara. Alhamdulillah. That is probably one of the best compliments ever. For real. That is amazing. SubhanAllah. Thank you for saying that. 14:24, he says, Alam tara kayfa daraba Allahu mathalan kalimatan tayyibatan ka shajaratin tayyibatin asluha thabitun wa far'uha fis sama'. He says, have you not seen or have you not looked to how Allah sets forth an example? Kalimatan tayyibatan, a word, a kalima that is tayyib, tayyiba, ka shajaratin tayyiba. It's like a tree that is tayyiba. Okay? What is a tree that's tayyiba? He's going to explain. Asluha thabit, its root or its trunk is firmly established. Wa far'uha fis sama', and its branches reach towards the heaven. Right? And then in the very next verse he says, Tu'ti ukulaha kulla hinin bi'idhni rabbiha. It gives its fruits. You just said fruitful. See how that just tied into what you said? Fruitful, healthy. SubhanAllah. It gives its fruits at all times by the permission of its Lord. Okay? So look at how both of these verses that use the word tayyib, right after it, what did it talk about? Something that produces growth by the permission of its Lord. Follow me? So from those couple verses, we can start off with a working definition of tayyib, and there could be more to it. The Quranic vocabulary is so deep and extensive. I wouldn't say about any word that once we talked about it from a few verses that we have all the depths of it. No, we might have some of the surface meaning or even some of the deeper meaning, but there's always more depths to get to. So from those couple verses, I would say one working definition that we could have for tayyib is something that produces growth, right? And not produces growth with difficulty, because in the previous verse that we went to, notice how he contrasted the land that is tayyib, which produces its vegetation by the permission of its Lord. He contrasted that with what? The land that's khabutha, that's impure, that only produces things with difficulty. Follow what I'm saying? So tayyib is something that produces things easy and without difficulty. That's why you can say it's pure. You can translate it as pure. But pure is just an English word, right? So it helps us in the translation, but we want to think of the deeper meaning when we think of the word tayyib. Ideally, that's what we want to try to build up to when it comes to studying the Quran, is we want to learn the vocabulary, learn the deeper meanings of the vocabulary, and then at some point just start to use the Quranic vocabulary. Because when we put it into like English terms, which we have to do obviously like as the medium for our communication, but when we do that, sometimes like these words, when we say pure, for example, in English, that makes us think of a certain thing. We wouldn't think to describe a tree as pure, for example, like how the ayah says, shajaratin tayyiba. We wouldn't think of seeing a tree and say that's a pure tree in English. At least I haven't heard people reference it like that. So thinking of the idea of tayyib as a type of purity that's not corrupted and has all of the constituents, yes, Paula, especially that's being compared to the kalima, a word, a statement, or even kalima could be an idea that's tayyib, right? Natural, yeah, something that's not been corrupted, that has the ability to produce growth, right? So now, let's go back to where we started, which was 168. 168. Wa alaikum salam. So going back to 168, This is why I think, and Allah knows best, there could be many reasons. But this is why I think in this verse he says, Ya ayyuhan nasu kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiba. O people, consume or eat what is in the earth, halalan tayyiban. Permissible, but also tayyiban, right? Tayyiban. Something that produces growth, right? And Allah knows best. There could be many other reasons, as a lot of people gave different reasons that could possibly be. Salam. But I wanted to give a little bit of understanding of the word tayyib. And then after that, he says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And do not follow, salam, the footsteps of a shaitan. Okay, so it's really interesting that here, the connection with food, like the idea of shaitan, yeah, growthful, yeah, subhanAllah, growthful. That's tayyib, growthful, something producing growth, right? So it's really interesting that here he connects the idea of food with not following the footsteps of shaitan. So if we think about that as just something external to ourselves, yeah, we are what we eat. I don't know if that's as beautiful, at least to me, as thinking about it, the shaitan as being a part of our own selves, right? Kulu means kulu could mean consume. It doesn't have to just mean no, it doesn't just have to mean food. No, for sure. It does just have to mean food. But because it says halal and tayyiban, for me that's the first thing that comes to my mind. But that doesn't just have to be the case. We can study it more, right? But I'm just trying to give an example to say how, because the idea that we're studying is the idea that shaitan represents the adversarial part of ourselves, from the Hebrew word Satan, which means adversary, and from the many verses in the Quran that refer to shaitan as adu, an enemy. So shaitan is the adu part of our own selves, is the part of our own selves that's working against our best interests, right? So that's why I started with this verse, because this verse is interesting because it potentially relates to food, and it could relate to other things other than food too, as you said, right? But I think thinking about it in terms of food is a good starting place to think about how shaitan represents the adversarial part of ourselves, the enemy part of ourselves. When we are being we even say that in English, we say, sometimes I'm my own worst enemy. Don't we? We say that, right? So, because don't follow the footsteps of shaitan, because eating, right, consuming is for a purpose. It's for nutrition. It could be medicinal, even like the way that we eat could affect our health, right? But don't follow the footsteps of shaitan, because if you've ever tried to diet or to eat better, you know how that goes. You know how the footsteps of shaitan goes, right? That adversarial part of yourself, because you put yourself on this like strict meal plan, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna eat this at these times. I'm not gonna eat this. I'm gonna cut this out, right? And then after like a few days, you're like, oh, I did good. Walaikum salam. I can have like a few cookies or a bag of chips or whatever it might be, right? So that's a starting point, right? That's the footsteps, because you're like, oh, I did good. I can relax a little bit and have this, and then it becomes a little bit more and a little bit more, and then you follow those footsteps. So yeah, the cheat meal, and I'm the first one. Don't get me wrong. My eating habits are not anywhere near what would be the ideal. But I'm just trying to give an example to show how this ayah, it makes a lot of sense when you think about shaitan being your own worst enemy, right? And how we follow those footsteps, and how we allow ourselves to rationalize and to relax on different guidelines and rules that we have taken on for ourselves, that we want to apply to ourselves to be a better person. And then what we end up doing is following those footsteps of that part of ourselves that's the enemy to our own selves, and that part of ourselves that wants to do things that works against our own growth, right? وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. He is a clear enemy for you. إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. He is a clear enemy for you. Okay? So I think that's really interesting that Shaytaan is defined as a clear enemy, because that helps us understand the meaning, the meaning of Shaytaan if we apply that word to our own selves. It's the part of ourselves where we become our own worst enemy. And also, if we go to verse 208, so same chapter, chapter 2, verse 208. Yeah, the middle path can definitely be difficult, for sure. Yeah, for sure, about going against our own soul, for sure, subhanAllah. So verse 208, he says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, udkhulu fis silmi kafatan. O you who have believed, enter in a silm. So, a lot of times when people translate this verse, they translate it as enter into Islam completely. But the verse doesn't quite say that. It uses the word as-silm. Silm. So the word silm, which you could spell like S-I-L-M, silm, or sin lam mim, it's from the same root as the word Islam, right? They're both from the root word sin lam mim, or S-L-M. So you have the word salam, which means peace. You have the word Islam. You have the word Muslim. You have the word here, silm. Also in the Quran, you have the word salam. So there's a few different words that come all from this root meaning. So most times when people translate 208, they translate it as udkhulu fis silmi kafatan. They say it means enter into Islam completely. Subhanallah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Now, why here did Allah specifically use the word silm instead of Islam? Because he could have said udkhulu fil islami kafatan. He could have said enter into al-Islam. So I think this is a problem when we study the Quran. Yes, silm could mean peace, right? For sure. That's kind of the point I was getting at. That I think one of the problems when we study the Quran is we mix terminology and we assume that things basically mean the same. So Islam and silm, they basically mean the same thing. They're from the same root, so they probably have a very common meaning, right? They have, as we say, as one of the scholars that we read his definition sometimes, will say, al-ma'na al-mihwari. They probably have the same pivotal or central meaning, right? Or al-asl al-wahid, the one root that's common between them. But that doesn't mean they're exactly the same in usage, because Allah could have easily said udkhulu fil islami, but he said udkhulu fis silmi. Yeah, enter wholeheartedly with purity, right? So perhaps part of the meaning is udkhulu fis silmi. Perhaps part of the meaning is like someone else commented, enter peace. Yeah, exactly. You kind of beat me to it. Is the idea of entering into a state of peace and lack of conflict, right? So we're trying to enter into a state of peace and lack of conflict based upon our living according to the morals and principles that Allah gives us. So lack of conflict between us as human beings, lack of conflict between different parts of our own selves. We're trying to have a unity within our own selves by following certain principles. And therefore different parts of ourselves aren't working against other parts, right? We're trying to have peace with the world around us and conformity with the world around us, where we live peacefully with the environment. Wouldn't that require seeking 100%? Yeah, alhamdulillah. I definitely agree. Harmony with the environment around us. Yes, that would require seeking a lot more knowledge, because how do we have uniformity and harmony with the world around us, with the environment, with the animals, with the plants? How do we have that kind of harmony where we're not a harmonious state? I saw this post actually on Facebook. They kind of exactly describes what I'm trying to say. It was a picture, so it was the visual representation really describe what I'm trying to say. But I'll try, like the Tao, yeah, subhanallah, exactly. But I'll try to describe how the picture was. So it was two pictures, and each one of them had a circle, and the circle were different animals, right? On each one, different animals, and they gave the example of the ego versus being part of nature. So in the picture that was classified as the ego, you had the circle of animals, which represents nature, and then they had the human being in the middle of that. So that represents the ego. You're in the middle of nature, and nature is all around you, and you think you're the center of all of that. Whereas the other picture represented being part of nature, and instead of the human being being in the middle, they put the human being as part of the circle. So we are part of the circle of nature. We are part of the circle of life. And us trying to have that ego way of thinking about things where we are the center of everything is what helps us and motivates us to take advantage of the environment, to take advantage of natural resources. Yes, we came from nature, we are nature for sure. So perhaps like if you think about this verse like that, udkhulu fis silmi kaffatan, enter completely in harmony with nature, in harmony with the principles that Allah has given. Don't be in conflict with nature. Don't be an enemy to nature. Don't be a shaytan to nature, right? Now look what he says in the rest of it. ادخلوا في السلم كافة ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان. As above, so below, for sure. Don't follow the footsteps of a shaitan. إنه لكم عدو مبين. He is a clear enemy to you. Look how many times he tells us that. So that gives us the impression that the idea of shaitan is being an enemy or an antagonist or an adversary. Yeah, don't be a shaitan to nature. I ought to put that on a shirt, actually. That's actually pretty good. Oh, yeah, for sure. It takes a lot of work. A lot of the stuff we talk about, I don't want you to ever think that, number one, when we talk about these things, that I'm saying them in a way, yeah, for sure, that like I have all this figured out and mastered, and I'm telling you what you need to do. Absolutely not. I'm first and foremost talking to myself. These are things that I need to work on. But also, don't think when we talk about these things, don't put yourself down and think like, oh, I don't know if I'll ever reach that level. That seems like such a high level. When we talk about these things, we talk about them in the sense of being an ideal that we aspire to. So we have a goal that we aspire to. Like we want to be this type of person. Knowing that it's very difficult to be that kind of person, especially in today's world. And it might take a lot of work and a lot of study, and we may never totally reach being that kind of person. But if we have an elevated and lofty goal, then even if we don't reach that particular goal, we still benefit a lot along the way. So that's kind of why we talk about these things. Not to beat ourselves up and to say like, oh, we'll never make it to that level. Just to say there's higher levels of this that we can reach to, and encouraging one another to be better. That's what yeah, subhanAllah. That's what a lot of I don't know why I didn't turn my notifications off. That's why that's one of the things for me that I get out of these classes for myself, and I hope to convey that to others, is that we're encouraging hopefully each other to be better. Yeah, shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you're still among the stars, right? Exactly, for sure. Okay, let's go to the next verse. So, the next verse I want to go to is, where is it at? Okay, here it is. 6:112. So we're gonna go to 6:112. So 6:112, he says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ. No, we do this every day. Not just every Jummah, every day at 2 Eastern time, that which is my time. UK time is 7 p.m. And anywhere else, I'm not sure what time it is, but I know a lot of people are from the UK, so that works for a lot of people. Wa alaikum salam. Yes, classes for beginners. If you message me about that, I can explain to you. So 6:112. I want to try to continue because, excuse me, I do have to leave at 3 today because I have to go to work. So I can't have a 3 hour stream like we did yesterday. That was fun though. I enjoyed that. I got something tickly. So, actually, before I read this next verse, I want to ask you guys a question too that I've been thinking about. Um, you don't have to answer. You can answer now. Um, you missed two because of work. You missed you mean you missed the 3 hour stream yesterday? If that's what you mean, I posted it. It's I recorded it. The audio version is already on Spotify. I have the video version recorded. I just didn't post it to YouTube yet. So no, so if you didn't hear it, go to Spotify and listen to it. It's there already. But my question for you is something I've been thinking about. Maybe like as a one time thing. Yeah, I'm on Spotify too. Check my bio. There's a link tree and it'll take you to YouTube and Spotify. So here's my question for you before we read this verse. Something I've been thinking about maybe as a long time or as a one time thing. So what would you guys think about a live stream like say for like 3 days in a row in addition to what we're doing? I would have to find a time when I'm off for a couple days in a row, find the right time where we try to read, recite, and complete the whole Quran in 3 days. What do you got? That would be very difficult, but the idea of challenging myself to do that, um, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I don't know. Would you guys be down for that? Yeah, that would be amazing. I've been thinking about it for the last few days. I don't know exactly. Yeah, I don't know exactly when we would do that, but I have to find the right time for it. Yeah, well, I don't mean like studying it. I don't mean like studying. I mean just purely reciting it. For like 3 days, like maybe I don't know, maybe 3 days is too much, maybe 5 days. I don't have to think about it some more. I was thinking about maybe implementing sometimes throughout the month. Uh, oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm not saying make that a continuous thing because we'll still have our classes where we take our time to do like we're doing now. But I had the idea of like um, just as a challenge, as kind of like I don't know, a challenge is the best word I could think of. Just to do like for a few days some longer streams, just focus on the Quran. I don't know. We could play with a few other ideas too. It doesn't have to be just that. It could be other things too that we can add. Throughout the month. I can't necessarily always do the longer live streams, but um, but I was thinking like certain times throughout the month maybe we could do some longer ones. For 30 to 40 hours for the whole thing. You mean? Yeah, I don't know. 3 days might be too ambitious. I don't know. But anyway, I just want to throw that out there. Let's read this next verse and we'll think about maybe some potential. Maybe even if you message me with some ideas for some longer streams, like if we have some longer streams like 2 or 3 times during the month where we have maybe a 3 hour stream or a 5 hour stream. Um, like some if you would you like to do it just like this where we have the study for a longer period of time each Friday of a month. That's a good idea. I like that. I like that. Yeah, just some ideas, just throwing it out there. That's not necessarily anything we're going to do right away. I've just been kind of playing with the idea in my mind. Maybe a book club. Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I was thinking about that before too. SubhanAllah, yeah. All right. um oh, like Islamic history, that actually would be kind of cool too. Yep, potentially. All right, before we go too far because we got 10 minutes and I really do have to go. So I want to read these couple verses for you. 10 to 15 hours a day. Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, could I do that for 10 hours? I thought it would be about 10 hours. I was like, because it's about an hour for a juz roughly. So if you read 10 juz in a day, that would get you 3 days. It would be like 10 hours. And I was like, could I do that for 10 hours? I don't know. Like I like challenging myself sometimes. So to me, that was just kind of like made it kind of interesting to think about. Could I, if I could do that? So I don't know. Just playing with certain ideas is too much. It might be. You might be right. I might just fall over. Yeah, subhanallah. Maybe. Inshallah. Inshallah. All right, let's read this verse before we run out of time. وَكَذَلِكَ, this is 6:112. If you remember, Hannah put it on the screen. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ يُوحِي بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ غُرُورًا. He said, and likewise we have made for every prophet an enemy, شَيَاطِينَ الْإِنسِ وَالْجِنِّ, devils of ins and jinn. يُوحِي بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ زُخْرُفَ الْقَوْلِ غُرُورًا. They are inspiring one another with adorned speech by means of deception. So, what I want to point out here is notice how he says, for every prophet, we have made enemies, devils, shayateen, of human beings and jinn. Al-insi wal-jinn. And these words, al-ins and jinn, can have other meanings. That's a different discussion. But the main thing that I want to point out is keeping along the lines of thinking of that Hebrew definition of Satan as being an adversary, and the many ayat that connect the idea of shaitan or shayateen to being an enemy or an opponent, right? So here he says, for every prophet we have made an enemy, shayateen al-insi wal jinn. So that's an important thing to think about, I think, because even though we might feel that that doesn't apply to us, because like, well, I'm not a prophet, so that doesn't apply to me. But I think everything in the Quran applies to all of us. And what I mean is, it's not the fact that you're a prophet or not a prophet. It's what the prophet symbolizes. So a prophet symbolizes someone who's connected to the teachings of Allah and is trying to live by those teachings and apply those teachings in his or her daily life, right? So perhaps what this means is everyone that's trying to live like that, right? That's trying to live up to the idea of what a Nabi symbolizes, will always be faced with aduwan shayateen al-insi wal jinn, will always be faced with this opponent or this adversary or this these environments or people or their own thoughts or their own parts of themselves that will be an antagonist or an enemy that will be like shayateen al-insi wal jinn, right? To connect this, let's connect this to 25:31. I think this is a really beautiful connection. So if we go to 25:31, he says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا مِنَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ وَعَلَيْكُمْ السَّلَامُ وَرَحْمَةُ اللَّهِ وَبَرَكَاتُهُ. He says, and likewise we have made for every prophet an enemy, عَدُوًّا مِنَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ, an enemy from the criminals. So look at the verses, right? In one verse he said for every prophet he made an enemy, shayateen al-insi wal jinn, devils of al-ins and al-jinn. But in this verse he says we made for every prophet an enemy, min al-mujrimin, from the criminals. Okay? So shayateen al-insi wal jinn are the mujrimin, potentially, right? That's one way to look at it. That the mujrimin, the people that are criminals is maybe not the best translation. That's how they usually translate it. But because of the world that we live in, criminal has a certain meaning when we use it. Mujrim or mujrimin is a concept that we should study in detail in the Quran. But very briefly, jarama, the word that it comes from, jarama, means to be cut off or to sever, right? So mujrim or mujrimin potentially are those people who are cut off from Allah. أَفَنَجْعَلَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ كَالْمُجْرِمِينَ. There's one ayah that says, shall we make the Muslimin like the mujrimin? So Muslimin, those who submit themselves, right? أَفَنَجْعَلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ كَالْمُجْرِمِينَ? Should we make those who submit themselves like the mujrimeen, those people who cut themselves off? So if we think about the idea of submission in a broad and universal way, just like we were talking about earlier, udkhulu fi silmi kafatan, enter into this state of harmony and peace, right? Right, for sure. I like that. When you try to live close to the qualities of the prophets, then darkness will follow you. I love that. But if you think about it like that, right, entering into this state of harmony, the Muslim, the Muslim, not thinking about it just in this narrow sense that people usually talk about it, but Muslim in a deeper, more universal sense, is the one who submits to the harmony of the universe, right? Meaning, yeah, of course, that's Allah, because Allah is the one that put that into play, right? But he goes along, he or she goes along with the flow of the principles and the morals and the laws that Allah has placed in his universe. So the Muslim is not someone who is contrary to the flow of nature, right? Perhaps the mujrim, the opposite, is the one who has cut himself off or cut herself off from the flow of nature, and so becomes an obstruction to the flow of nature, right? Becomes an enemy, becomes a shaytaan to nature and to the world and to the people in it. So for every nabi, everyone that's trying to connect herself to the laws and principles that Allah has given us, there is an enemy of the mujrimeen that are detached, right? That are detached. And if you go right before it, the verse right before it, so 25:31, this is the verse that we're reading, right? If you go to 25:30, and this is the point that we'll end with today, 25:30 says, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ, and the messenger said, or the messenger will say, Ya Rabbi, O my Lord, inna qawmi ittakhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjura. Will say, my people have taken this Quran as something to be abandoned, right? And then the next verse is when he says, وَكَذَلِكَ, and it's like that, and it's like that, likewise, وَكَذَلِكَ, it's like that, جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا مِنَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ, we have made for every prophet an enemy of the mujrimeen. Why would he say it's like that? The verse before it talked about what? It talked about abandoning the Quran. And then the very next verse he said, it's like that we made for every prophet an enemy of the mujrimeen. Meaning trying to detach us from the Quran. Puzzle time. They couldn't have just waited. TikTok couldn't just wait like 2 more minutes. I guess they didn't know when I was stopping. But you see what I'm saying? When you put the verses together, right, it gives us another dimension to al-mujrimeen. Al-mujrimeen are those who are adversarial and cut off from the, you don't get this part. Okay, let me explain it again. So if you read from 25:30 to 25:31, so let's read it again. I'm going to go through it step by step. وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. And the messenger will say, O my Lord, my people have abandoned this Quran, or have taken this Quran. I didn't think I'm an AI, yeah, for sure. And the messenger will say, oh my Lord, my people have taken this Quran as something to be abandoned. Then the verse 31 says, وَكَذَلِكَ. Now let me explain. Maybe the reason why it didn't make sense because I explained it quick because I saw the time running down. Let me explain this word, كَذَلِكَ. So كَذَلِكَ, they usually translate as likewise, okay? But let's break that word down. كَذَلِكَ. So the original word that we're looking at is ذَلِكَ, which means that, okay? When you say كَذَلِكَ, okay, so before I say what that means, what does the word ذَلِكَ mean? That. In Arabic, they call that ismul ishara lil ba'id. It's the noun that's used for pointing to something far away. So if there's something far away, like something over there, I say ذَلِكَ, that over there. If there's something close, I say Hada, this. Okay? That's called ismul ishara lil qarib. The noun of pointing to something near is hada, this. The noun of pointing to something far is dhalika, that. Okay, so that's the first thing. So when we put the ka sound on the front of it, ka, this is called kaf at-tashbih, the kaf that indicates resemblance. So when we say ka dhalika, like that, meaning so the that is pointing to something far away, right? It's pointing to something far away. But when I say ka dhalika, like that, I'm comparing what I'm talking about now to something over there. I'm saying like that. That's why they say likewise, right? But I think like that to me is clearer. It makes the meaning clearer. But yeah, likewise is how they usually translate it, right? So like someone does something over here and I'm trying to like use this as an example. And I say, see, like that, like kadalika, like that, right? So now think of the verses like that. Think of the verses كذلك كذلك المثل الذي ضربته لك إلا إذا تمنى. Oh yeah, ألقى الشيطان في أمنية. Not yet, but inshallah, that's one of the ones we're going to come to because that's a really deep verse. So now let's think of these verses again. وقال الرسول يا ربي إن قوم اتخذوا هذا القرآن مهجورا. And the messenger will say, my Lord, my people have abandoned this Quran. Then the next verse he says, وَكَذَلِكَ, and it's like that. جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا مِنَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. It's like that. The abandonment of what was given to the prophet. It's like that we make for every prophet an enemy of the mujrimeen. You follow? Does that make sense now? Right? It's like that. That's how they become the enemy, is by taking us away from and trying to cause us to abandon the Quran. Does that make sense? Hopefully I explained it. If not, maybe go back and go through the recording once I post it and see if it makes sense going back through it again. Alhamdulillah, for sure. So with that, we'll end for the day, and we'll pick this up tomorrow, inshallah. And we're going to go back to the idea of Shaytaan being an enemy tomorrow because we didn't go through all the verses. So, inshallah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Iyak wa alaikum salam. For sure. Thank you too. Alhamdulillah. Thank you too. Inshallah, see you guys tomorrow, man. Love you guys, man. Assalamu alaikum. Iyak.